Plenty to drink.
Hello.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
The Starfield reviews are out, the dust is starting to settle. I've had the game for 3 or 4 days. I got peasant access with the Game Pass sort of minimum entry level. There have been some controversies with Jimquisition only giving it a 4 out of 10, altering its meta score, and of course Heels versus Babyface completely losing it over the pronouns issue. You may remember me looking at Dead Space remake way back that has a non-binary toilet in it, didn't mention it, so if you're not on board with those policies, don't really give them the time of day, especially don't go crazy on Twitter and let everyone point at you for being a bit weird. Talking of a bit weird, this game did not have the smoothest of entries with me on PC. I've done a few things on adjustment, including getting rid of that film grain and putting it to medium. It copes. I get 30 frames per second at 1080 only, so I haven't taken this to 2K or 4K, but I'm very happy that this early footage totally shows how much work can be done with it. I am Couch Coop, by the way. We just had a wasp in here. Jesus Christ, it's hot in the UK tonight. I do want to talk about young Jim's input quickly because he's probably feeling quite smug with a double win on that, got some clout with the tweet and got the Metacritic score moved essentially. And he's referring to Fallout 3 being the last time we saw some decent Bethesda game development work. I think it's a bit ridiculous to deny Skyrim and Fallout 4 some recognition. For me, there's now 3 pillars, including this game, and I'm very much behind Starfield, but it is a true Bethesda clone almost, existing to so many of the other rules that those previous games also do. However, the key word is here, Jim, they've added onto that structure in such a fantastic way. I'm going to show you some of the areas and hopefully step off the beaten track so you haven't seen all the things that the big name reviewers have been pumping out recently. And yeah, I'm stuck in this photo mode. I'm not talking about the glitch. I'm actually stuck in it for so long doing pointless stuff. You know, it's got hold of me. It's got a grip on me. And I'm obsessed with it all. The assets are good. I like the engine. I cannot believe all of this footage is 30 frames per second. Sometimes it bunches up to like 40 and 50 when you get interior, nice tight areas. But outside, most of it is around the 30 frames. Still very smooth. Still very pretty for a game that's on medium setting. That also goes for external shots. You can pause the game No Man's Sky style, get a look at your ship 360 degree, because that is the only way to do it. You don't get the chance to rock the camera around if you're piloting the vehicle itself. I'm going to look at that No Man's Sky analogy a bit more. It's space travel and space movement and combat. For me, particularly the combat area, have more to do with Elite Dangerous than they do No Man's Sky. However, the planetary exploration areas, not procedural generation, obviously also does step on the toes a little bit of No Man's Sky, but these planetary transitions and actually landing in real time, it's not a thing, doesn't happen. You do it all on load screens, which is a bit of a shock to some reviewers, I feel, but it's bloody handy because you can clatter around the whole map without having to dive through that cloud cover only to be, revealed underneath. This is quite different. Vasco, I kind of got a love-hate relationship with him. He's a bit of a photo bomber. I love him. I want him around though. He's got that Interstellar vibe and he says some genuinely funny stuff. Also, his idle animations are just top-notch. Again, back on the No Man's Sky side, the jetpack, extremely similar and well cool. You feel very free on the planetary surfaces, having that even double jump system going. But it's these vistas, I promise we'll stop having it this soon. All the time, it swells up and you think, Jesus Christ, this game's huge and beautiful. Alright, let's look at the first population point. You see, this is pretty cool, very heavy on the traffic with people walking around and no performance issues, no load screens really when you're walking around the exterior. Amazing real-time shadows and it's dynamic day and night, looks great at night. Of course, the trees and all this expensive feel is quite corporate. As you probably know, it's one of a few. This is the polar opposite to a lot of the rundown or even neon cyberpunk style cities and places you get to visit. But as a first step in, very much impressed. I'm very impressed with all the NPC movement, not too much glitching, and barely any NPC design repeats. Cyberpunk 2077. Pay attention. So I'll just cover it quickly. The photo mode is so well integrated with everyday gameplay that it's now an integral part of my control system. You can whip to it and then just move into any asset with the whole game paused. You can use it to check out areas, even look around corners. I think they need to, you can't nerf a photo mode. But wow, look at the expressions on the metal, the detail here. This is blatantly Vasco's replacement. I love looking at all of the stories and detail behind every single creature, human, and asset within this beautiful map.
Watch out for the robots. They're surprisingly sneaky.
Let's talk about those controls very quickly, because this game isn't without its problems on sort of bug and glitch with me on my particular PC. It doesn't recognise the right analog stick on some loadings, and I have to keep going back through. It got me in a huge panic yesterday because I was getting some last minute footage and it wasn't recognising my pad. Also, that film grain seems to be integral on the frame rates, and putting it right the way down or getting rid of it really pushes on the CPU of my machine. So I've had to sort of compromise. I'm having a war and I've got it at about 65%. I don't want any of it on there, but it seems to free up some memory that's used on the game full stop. I also put this game on my HD drive. Can you believe, on the first time I was playing it, because I just didn't want to move everything around on the SSD. There wasn't enough room, but I migrated it, and holy crap, don't go near it on an HD drive. I know it says SSD is a requirement. Always want to try these things first, but yeah, after moving that over, complete heaven.
That you will reward the promised and cast the accursed into shadow.
I'm also very thankful that the space combat is not terrible. No Man's Sky features a lock-on button that really needs to be nerfed, and you have this elite dangerous control scheme that I'm really at home with. Moving the power around, that throttle, the reverse, everything just feels just right. It's important that your space combat isn't too easy. There needs to be risks in travelling or having high value cargo, and there's a lot of that in this game. I was very impressed with the modification system on all of the weapons, with the spacecraft themselves. Huge fun, and that can't be said for all of the space exploration simulators. Let's talk about that exploration conundrum, because it turns out there's only about 1,000 planets and they don't really have that big a variant on them. You're not going to find ones that are completely opposite to each other on a sort of asset level. Gas giants and other planets that are not solid state you can't land on, obviously, so you're knocking out a few options there when you get into solar systems. I wasn't aware, however, of the docking procedure and coming up to stations and going into sort of smaller spatial structures, clearing them out, investigating, that sort of thing. That does increase the count on discovery a little bit for me, but we'll come back to the planetary thing because I haven't been disappointed with it, and I'm quite impressed with a lot of indigenous life and variant on planetary foliage and plants to be discovered, different rocks to be drilled. You guys know the drill, no pun. I think that may be one of the stronger tools used against this game are the missed promises from Todd himself about exploration and how open-ended it is. The thing with Mr. Howard is that he loves to sell, and he loves to sort of oversell or upsell or just really make shit up sometimes blatantly. He's been in trouble with it before, and whenever you see him do a promo or anything now, it's all taken with a pinch of salt. And the same goes for young Sean Murray, who also was difficult to find after the release of No Man's Sky for some strange reason. And it's just unfortunate that Jim Quisition allowed himself to sort of get wrapped up in Mr. Howard's hype ball, and then of course it shatters, as always, when things are released. But I want to look at what we've got here right now with Starfield on like week one, day one almost. and it's damned amazing. That brings me over to the combat. This stitches the whole game together. I think with the mention of Skyrim and Fallout 4 and even 76 to a certain extent, we did witness a sort of evolution in the correct direction with Bethesda's combat issues. It went from flaky with Skyrim to almost workable with Fallout 4, and then 76 sort of looks like a normal game. With this is AAA perfect integration with combat, and that's where it's leaps ahead of No Man's Sky. Absolutely. This is a cover-based third, first, or even 2.5 person shooter. That brings me on to its brilliant switch out on having someone on screen or going to that first person. It's just, you couldn't want for more when it came to fighting aliens on some strange barren moon, which brings me on to the next point. There is a hell of a cookie cutter going on with most of the moons. None of them really stand out, and that's where No Man's Sky swings back with its amazing variants. Most of my fun though is fighting the other human or humanoid races, taking them down at bases, almost doing a bit of sneak to sort of scope things out. You can't tag anybody, and there's not really a mini-map that helps you. You struggle to see who's shooting you in the back. That's why you've got to start creeping around, and you get hooked on every bit of furniture within the map, but you cannot help but smile. Because you know you're going to come through with either your equipment or just cheat and just keep buffing yourself with health and using that special which comes after about the 4-hour mark, which is the shoulder buttons. You get to switch it out if you're a different class type, I think, but you totally realize you're playing the third pillar in these 3 brilliant titles. Externals and alien interaction, i.e. the stuff they're doing with each other and how they attack and what that looks like, is a little bit janky. It's hard to sort of witness anything of value when you first get onto a planet. You have got to hunt it down. There's no wildebeest herds flying past here by any stretch of the imagination. But I think if you're willing to put the time in or hang around long enough, then some OP stuff will come your way. Sticking with the combat, and the companions are handy. Vasco can be partnered up with someone else. You can essentially have quite a few people following you around. The coding for it is just identical to those other 2 aforementioned games. If you know what you're dealing with and you know how to utilize this mechanic, it's a hell of a lot of fun, and you get a lot of attachment with whoever's with you, and there is some development there. But Jesus, that brings me over to the inventory system. You are given, I think, 145 at the beginning, without any perks, weightlifting to increase that capacity. Everything you have to make a decision on. You can hold about 10 guns. I think maybe that's my fault. I'm a huge gun hoarder, and the outfits, and of course the helmets, they're different. Even the backpacks are another slot. So you just have to make these sacrifices. There is storage on the frontier in this tiny goddamn cabinet, but you get to the bases, start building the storage. That's the incentive to unlock that awesome mechanic, which we'll get to. There's just so many complaints about it though. It is really ridiculously small what you can haul around compared to what's shoved at you. Like, you're constantly given new complete outfits with a head, helmet, rather, full body and backpack, and you're like, I can't take it. I can't come back and get it. You just have to move on. It breaks the heart. What doesn't break the heart though is finding random ships on planetary surfaces, killing everyone outside of it, then getting on it and completely murdering the entire crew in cold blood, and then commandeering the ship. I was heartbroken. I didn't have the perk to actually steal it, register it, have it as my own, but that is a thing, and that's another big incentive to actually look around each planet you're going past or looking at on that local scanner, because those unknown markers, they do pay off, and this was a lot of fun. I felt genuinely sorry for everybody on board.
Time to get back.
Where are you going?
It's going to take me a while to get into the base building thing, and I think it's also something the game wants you to get into sort of mid, because some of the elements that you have to gather them, and you've got to make the struts on the workbench thing, and you can only go to a certain tier on sort of basic entry to that campaign. So it's cool to experiment. It will get bigger. I wasn't a big fan of it on Fallout 4, but what I enjoyed was that it didn't matter. There was so much content outside of the settlement area that you just cracked on with something else, and that's definitely the case here. The whole ship thing though, trading, stealing, buying, selling, getting hold of prefabricated ships is definitely the way forward for me. The construction element, I do love the idea of it. It's a bit complicated for me, and I'm not too happy with the sort of cookie cutter shapes. You can't go that outlandish. I was looking at someone who'd made some Star Trek homages, so it's cool, but it's just almost, again, Elite Dangerous, like to sort of jump into something new, earn the money, do some trading, and get a more badass ship. I really love the starter ship. It's ridiculously a lot like the Prometheus ship, so I'm keeping that one for a while. You can slap modifications on. Mate, when is this photo thing gonna end? It's not. I haven't taken one static photo. The pan is too good. The zoom is too smooth. All the furniture and all the little trinkets and decor and difference in location is just gonna keep me sucked in for so long. Bethesda know this. They know it's my weakness. But wow, utilizing it to its maximum in the hub, or the lodge as it's called. Really cool stuff lying around. Apollo 13 stuff on the desk. I'm pretty sure that's Kevin Bacon up on the right. There's these three main quest chunks that it wants you to do, because it introduces you to a lot of the sort of railroad mechanics that you're not going to get round, and you need to sort of get on board with to finish the game, essentially, including the skills and the perks and how to deal with diseases, that sort of stuff. But once you sort of get on top of most of them, it sort of says off you go then, and you can look at some of the activities and smaller side quests, just land at random planets. It always results in a little bit of a surprise. I think that's a key word here. The campaign has very much surprised me, and the NPC companions haven't really annoyed me. Vasco, point being, I got that feeling that you kind of really only get with Bethesda games, because they're so good for RPGs, and those previous games did point to there's some talent, genuine talent being in that studio, and it shone through here. It's a bit like that BioWare magic thing, where there wasn't any for Anthem. There is Bethesda magic, and I think that's why it sat in that studio so long for the polish. It is quite minimal on the bug level. I hope that controller thing sorts itself out, and I reckon we'll see a huge patch come in and totally rework a lot of that UI and inventory system. Even keeping a similar lockpicking system to Skyrim and the Fallout games in this series must have been the biggest hint going. I don't know how Jimquisition missed it, but this is the third installment in their sword and sorcery epic Skyrim, their apocalyptic dystopian amazing Fallout 4, and now the epic sci-fi adventure that is Starfield.
Am I being reassigned somewhere?
What can I help you with? Do you need my help?
I've got like nearly 40 minutes of footage for this game. That's even after me distilling it and taking out all the offcuts. So that's a definite sign that I'm hugely invested in it. I will finish that campaign, but it's only 11 hours technically, so make sure you're spanning out and doing every single side quest before moving forward with main quest keystones. This particular planet looked extremely different because I went into an interior section, came out and it was daylight and it was raining, and it was very much a change of aesthetic, and I got to see some quite big predatory beasts, attack them. There was a bit of panic. It's always fun. This got me thinking about Obsidian's Outer Worlds, and it's such a shock to the system to realise that that game really is as deep as a puddle. People are throwing around the ocean shallow analogy with this, but holy hell, I've had a lot more fun and feel a lot more free than I did with almost the Rails-like gameplay we saw with that travel and a mimicked open world system. When this all kicked off though, the frame rates went down to 25 to like 20 frames per second. When you're in combat with big creatures outside on planetary surfaces, the machine suffers. My fan is also on constantly when this game is playing. I need a new PC, that is obvious. Holy moly, Starfield is the game to persuade you to do that. Same planet also had another unknown marker on it. This panned out to be like a corridor tunnel thing I could see at the top of this like precipice. Got up there with the still got the climbing crazy janky physics on slope. But yeah, it panned out to be an electrical station, had a little secret trapdoor thing, met a bloke in there, rescued him, took him back to his ship, which turned out to be loads better than mine. Thought I was going to see it take off. Did he offer to give it to me? No. Gave me about 1,000 credits, but it's very nice to have these little incremental, nice little sub-quests with dialogue and cool little snippets of story embedded in them. So on the same planet, got to see a sort of sunset vista and all these grass and little plants. The pan, Dan Barrett is the biggest photobomber of them all. I think I'm going to switch a lot of those NPCs out, and I've got a huge amount of crew. You had an empty ship to start the game, and now you've got like 5 or 6 NPCs nattering at you when you try going back to the ship for some peace. This section also a bit of a showstopper for me. It goes full Inception and gives you anti-grav. Now this is interesting. Dead Space Remake comes back into the conversation, and they implemented this, and the original had it, but the switch on controls for going up and down vertical, having a little boost, wow, it really felt natural. And all of the angles, a bit like the Descent games that came out in the 90s on PC, going back a bit there. So there's really only nothing but genuine enthusiasm from me about this game, and it brings me on to the sort of strange world we live in now, where subscription services for gaming, almost like, you know, TV and film, like the Netflixes, you can just subscribe and have access to a huge AAA 25 years in the making game like this, almost on day one for a very small cost, and that just changes the variables hugely for me because it's also available on PC. I don't need to own an Xbox console to play Bethesda's greatest, newest game, and also the Microsoft exclusivity was just not something that was a thing 10 years ago. So a lot of change and a lot of adjustment in the way we purchase and play games. The reason I brought that up is because there's so many games on Game Pass, full price AAA ones, that we have access to. Exoprime was one of them that I just would never pay full price for. This, 60 to 70 pounds, you know, in an imaginary, amazing universe where it's released on all platforms, for PlayStation 5 would be an immediate purchase. Completely amazing offline single player content also, and we do not see enough of that from the industry.
Even by Shawgang standards.
Don't be causing trouble now.
This is how much I like this game. I got up at 10 o'clock to play it this morning, okay? I needed to get some more footage, fair enough, but I would never, if you know me, I would never ever do anything in that direction, even around the 12 o'clock mark. Because I've been a kid the last time I got up at that time in the morning to play video games, and that really did bring something else in me. I feel that whole space adventure fuzzy feeling came back. I didn't get it with No Man's Sky, only just when they put the story updates in. Didn't have a quest line, and this really does, and a very cool optional bunch of quest lines and locations that just have all manner of discoverable things in them that will then open up new quest lines. I would say this is a 250 hour plus game. The 11 hours on main content is something that you should savor and go back to when you finished everything in and around that area. All of those 1,000 planets I hope to be able to look at, and the ones that I've come across so far have just been amazing, epic. They haven't been too barren, and they've got enough of them to keep me genuinely interested. I think the key is in a lot of this structural direction, with a lot of places being heavily populated with cool NPCs with stories to tell. They've been attacked by aliens, that sort of stuff. Also noticeable is that everybody is a humanoid. You look at Mass Effect or something else that's got a metropolis or a population in sci-fi world, they've normally got stuff that doesn't exist to that bipedal template. That one's a bit annoying. Maybe I'll see more when I get further into different planets on different space stations. For a sci-fi game, it's absolutely 10 out of 10 as well. I did a list about top sci-fi horror, which has got things like Alien Isolation in it, Prey, you know, a lot of corridor crawling, Dead Space is in there. It's only the third time we've mentioned that in this video, Coop, but this would have gone sky high in that list. I do love the aliens. Some of those corridors are genuinely frightening. There are hive structures and things I don't want to show you on a spoiler level, but you're going to find very juicy and hilarious things out there on those planets.
Out here in the void, there are no rules, only the music.
I was, of course, Couch Coop, and this was the longest video game review I think I've done on the channel this year, so thank you very much for getting to the back end, and leave me a like and a sub. I'll put that sci-fi horror list in the description. I will see you down there.
Any ship could be a party cruise. I'm sure you'll find more of us out there.
Plenty to drink.
Hello.